Hello, I'm Audrey and welcome to my first ever interview. Please bear with me if my inexperience becomes too apparent at any stage. I'm very honoured and privileged to be here with the wonderful Dr. Joanna North, who has written a book called Mind Kind, which is all about the different stages of development of a child's mind. Mind kind meaning being aware of the stage of your child's development, mind blind being the opposite. Now, the reason I'm interested in speaking to Joanna is that I decided not to have children for various reasons. One of them being that I was scared of this huge responsibility of bringing and raising a human being into this world, because I believe I was far too selfish to invest in someone other than myself, which was already difficult. Had I read this book, I might have felt differently. I would have known what to do, had some tools to guide me through, and mainly know that no one ever gets it right. I was doing a course where Joanna was a guest speaker, and I was very taken by her passion, devotion, and dedication to her work. She is a doctor of psychology, a chartered psychologist, and a chartered scientist with 30 years of experience working with children, adults, and families, and has won an award from the British Psychological Society for her work with adopted children. So hello, Joanna, and thank you for taking time out for this. I hope it will be useful for parents and those considering being a parent. Is there anything you'd care to add or explain before we get started?
Just to say, I'm a doctor of psychotherapy and I'm also a psychologist. So just so that, you know, people get muddled up with that. So there's a little tiny bit of a difference, but don't worry about that. So no, it's a big decision, isn't it, to have children? And I think that that in the world, particularly perhaps in the Western Hemisphere, we do have a choice. I think for many women and men, there's not that thinking point about children. But somehow we do have a choice, and perhaps we think more carefully about these things than our parents might have done, or our parents before them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's a sort of a tipping point that we reach, I think, and I can understand why young women particularly might have anxieties and fears about parenting in the world that we live in right now. I really get that. Yes, and people are worried about the environment, and they're worried about the economy, and they're worried about global relations, and you know, these things do. I think it's worth thinking about them carefully. But I also think that I think that you cannot have children and have a thoroughly enriched life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, I think what I try not to do is idealize having children, which is a bit of a tendency. Perhaps it's a bit of a sort of psychological tendency that tricks us into having children, you know, because it is such a complicated, demanding experience. But I've got a lot of friends who don't have children, and it doesn't diminish their lives that they choose that pathway.
There's a call for there's a term called universal auntie, which is the women that don't have children but play a role in their community or in their society, where they help the mothers with the kids. A friend of mine, she's got something like 10 godchildren, and she has quite a few nieces and nephews, and she's so connected to them and very, you know, so she plays a very important role. And were she to have kids, she probably wouldn't be able to be there so much for her, you know, the people who are godmothers and her brothers and sisters. So yes, and I actually have worked with kids as well in the past. I've worked with Kids Company, and I've taught kids yoga for many years. So you know, it's true. I mean, life can be enriched either way. You know, as you say, it's a journey both ways, and it's an interesting title from one of the chapters in your book. It's a journey, not a destination. And it's interesting because with any great journey, there will always be the unexpected, there'll be the difficult. but there will also be the joy of the adventure. But if you're as well prepared as you can be, as if you were to take a big journey, you might find it slightly less daunting. So with that in mind, why don't we start with the developing mind of an infant to, let's say, sort of 18 months old. You talk about very strong survival instinct in the little mammal brain, that's the little baby's brain, waiting to grow into sort of an adult human being brain with a more sort of sophisticated thinking brain. So would you like to talk about, you know, what parents can expect from those years of that development stage?
That's early stage from birth to toddlerhood is a remarkable piece of the jigsaw of being human, and the way that a child's brain is developing is so vast and so miraculous that I think parents really, you know, even if they pack the rucksack for the journey, you know, and they've got their kit, you know, that are always taken by surprise by this incredible demand, and the demand that is placed on them suddenly to help this little infant survive, and many parents feel overwhelmed at understanding the demands of a new baby. And yet that demand is so important. It's so important that we listen to it, to what the child's communications about survival, about the call to care for me, protect me, feed me, make sure I'm safe, make me feel safe, help me to feel safe. I can't do anything on my own. And the utter helplessness of an infant who are totally dependent on parental care and parental thought. And it's a great training ground. You know, babies are very good at training up their parents. And what you can't learn from a book, you will learn from your baby. And I think it's a wonderful, you know, that sort of who's training who here, really. That's actually the baby's training the parent to, not consciously, but the parent to respond to calls. And I think that's the thing to be able to do, you know, and we hear expressions that are sort of baked into our narrative, aren't they? We hear the term demanding baby, as if that's a sort of derogatory thing, whereas in fact, wow, that's great, you know, of course your baby's demanding. It's the level. Some are louder and more demanding, perhaps some have different, and lots of characteristics and preferences that start to emerge really quickly. That you know, the sort of unique qualities of this little being in the world, that again are baked into the DNA of this child, that start to be expressed. Some babies are quieter, some babies need much more attention, but either way the story is about keep me safe, care for me, protect me, stay close enough and listen, hear my call, and you are on the other end of that. Another I mean, my mother's used to, one of her favorite expressions was, you know, that baby's got you on a piece of string, and it's just like, absolutely, you know,
that's how it should be.
Baked into that generation, which is absolutely understandable. But of course, you know, you know, that baby's got a hold of you, and that vibrational level. So it's so immersing, and I think it's really hard to be prepared for that. And I think I don't think words do it. That even, as I say, and very often the parents who are most prepared are often the most surprised.
Yes. No, you know, you talk about, you know, the routine, and that babies know nothing about timekeeping, and they're just going to be all over the place. But if there is an opportunity to try and find a routine that the baby would respond well, if that was able to be established, but obviously that's not always possible.
No, they don't keep the clock, but familiarity is very nice and very comforting. So the familiarity of of routine is creates a great deal of safety for children. And there is no doubt. I mean, they'll break the routine and they'll change it every now and then, but being able, you'll hear most new mothers feel better when they are in a routine with their baby, and the babies are settled. It's the whole thing of settling after birth, and settling into familiarity, and responsiveness that is the wonderful thing. And then within that, mother or carer, parent and child feeling that all is well, and that then they can enjoy interactions. It's not just about demand, it's about those enjoyable interactions, of eye contact and skin contact and
you mentioned sorry. You mentioned in the book about that babies looking for shapes, and they're curious to fix on a shape to give them something to, I suppose, a bit of an anchor, a feeling of safety, and that is the mother's face and the father's face, and how that becomes how they learn about expressions, and they learn about relationships through looking at their mum or dad's face.
Well, and locate, and absolutely, and they know they exist because they see this familiar face and hear these familiar sounds and have this familiar feeling. And a baby begins to experience themselves through others. Which is famously what Winnicott was discussing and trying to help people to understand, that a baby needs someone on the other side of its experience in order to feel that it is present. And and then how very alarming it is for an infant to have any sense that there's an absence. It's quite terrifying and alarming, to feel that familiarity is not there for a few months. And so mothers, fathers and carers, they get tied into a sense that they have to be close. They have to allow, set up this continuousness, and that's again, and it's a very demanding thing that you can't, perhaps mothers or carers might feel they can't go to the toilet without the baby needing to be with them. And yes, it's probably true. They do like that familiarity. So demanding babies, all good, healthy. Trying to go with it, really. It's hard though, and what we need to do is we really need to, as a society, be very supportive of mothers and early carers, mothers, fathers and early carers. We need to be kind, and this is where perhaps friends and family and health visitors and people like yourself come in to we need to wrap our arms around people, and that's a very, very trying and anxious, provoking time for a parent, mental and emotional change and upheaval and identity change, chemical response in the body and the brain, having given birth is just enormous. And we need to be incredibly supportive and helpful, and not hinder this process.
I remember someone saying once about when you are pregnant, he said your life is not your own. Because you're, as you say, you're there to be a carer for you're the primary carer for this little helpless thing that's into this world. But it's a two-way thing, and you were saying about both of you are growing, that the child will show you things and bring up your irritations and frustrations and everything that you could possibly calm down in your daily life, because you're going to be called upon. That it's going to show you where your capabilities lie. And that's when you're saying about having as much support and care and understanding from everyone, because we don't like confronting our own difficult areas, our own places of discomfort. And when the baby's uncomfortable or in discomfort, that's the way it is. And it's so hard, must be so hard to find a place and a way to soothe when you're still up there with this emotion and frustration and everything. So
that's absolutely right. I think that a lot of parents will go through periods of feeling quite frightened, of how to meet this need, how to keep their baby safe, at the same time going through huge change in themselves, and the mental, the impact on the mind is enormous. And I think we completely take all of that for granted, or certainly previously have. And I think that we need to be much more aware of the impact on mental health of parents.
If I'd have read this book, because I remember years ago when my friend had some children, she didn't know whether or not to leave them crying, and in your book you said that it gives them a sense of despair if you leave them to cry. And I know that there are, because your book is so not about techniques, it's more of a philosophy of listening to your child, and tuning in. You talk about attunement as well, so maybe could you speak a little bit about attunement and how to find that within yourself?
Well, I mean, I guess the attunement is the key. It's the tuning into your baby that helps that baby feel held, in physically very probably, but they feel held in all sorts of ways. And I think that's the work of Daniel Stern, who particularly focused on attunement. And it's if you misattune, you're kind of missing the cause of the child. And if you attune, I mean, even if you're well attuned, it's still going to be hard. What does that mean? It means understanding the different cries of the baby, a hungry cry, an angry cry, a fearful cry, an irritable cry. It means understanding the moods that your baby will go through. It means understanding their comfort needs, and it's sort of like that very intimate relationship at infancy of which is beyond words actually, which is the tuning in. It's like tuning a radio. That really is the key. And what we see, and I've done a lot of work with parenting that hasn't gone well, and where parents have been misattuned, and the impact on that the child has to struggle so hard because they just want to be held and they want to be understood. A child needs so badly to be understood, and attunement is that very first step. So it takes a little time. It's not like, wow, I've just had my baby, I'm attuned. I don't think it works like that. It takes a little time to tune in.
And is there any
get used?
Is there any help you could offer for that tuning in? I mean when you say that to me, I kind of imagine myself with baby, and because there's probably a very fine line when you're trying to just be very open and being there for your baby who's crying, and you don't really know why, and then I can just imagine a switching, and then you're going into panic because there's something wrong with your baby and you don't know what it is, and then you start panicking, and then the baby will pick up on that, it's that being conscious of your own energy, as it were, to be Aquarius about it. But it is because children probably are, babies are very attuned to the energy, aren't they? And so as a yoga teacher, probably I would start to try and calm my breathing down maybe that would infiltrate somehow, and the baby might start to calm down. And you talk about in the book, you know, that sort of acceptance of a child, of where the child is, and you know, not to try and change it, but to be there with it. And then just from the being there with it, then things can shift. And I
think that it brings with it an attunement to yourself.
Yes.
You know, that you need to be, I think calmness is really important, but we also live in a world that's not terribly calm.
Yeah, I know.
And we have to be really good self-managers. And that's difficult when you're in a whole new arena and you're just learning about a new baby. So it's about being able to be patient with yourself as you learn, and take care of yourself, and help others to take care of you too. You know, helping others and communicating to support you. But it's complicated. I mean, you don't have to be in perfect attunement all the time. You just have to be able to do that most of the time. You know, if you look at our lives, you're in the supermarket with a 6-week-old baby, trying to do a week's shopping, and trying to budget, and trying to look after the toddler, and you know, I mean, which is very familiar to a lot of people. Even if you haven't had children, you know, this is a very demanding thing to do, and the toddler wants everything on the shelf because that's what toddlers do. You know, that's, you know, it's being able to, you know, still attune to your baby, and perhaps even at times you have to put your own needs to one side in order to manage everything, but at the same time bringing yourself back to base and making sure your own needs are met too, because I think that mothers, fathers and carers, who don't want to be, you want to let yourself get run down. And the theme really through all of that book is, you know, is the theme that we refer to a lot of. You've got to put your own oxygen mask on in order to be able to give the oxygen mask to others. You know, it's a really, really powerful picture, isn't it?
I presume that, you know, you would feel selfish if you were to, you know, not to put your child first, you know, to put your oxygen mask on first, and to take care of your baseline needs, would feel uncomfortable, because you might not want to do that, because you would believe that everything that you do is for your baby and for your child. So, you know, I think that must be quite a good thing to know early on, so that you try not to get super overwhelmed when it's almost, you come really close to the edge, and to keep remembering.
The big spoiler for most parenting is stress. If things are stressing parents, it chips away at their parenting. And stress and distress is, you know, and so and that's life, and that happens, and a lot of parents have to claw their way through a lot of parenting. But we have to watch out for the impact of stress, because that impacts on the nervous system, and then of course we know that there's that correlation between the carer and child, and that impact on the nervous system of the child, and then the child becomes anxious and dysregulated, and then it's just difficult. You know, so we do know, I mean, we've always known for a long time that the big challenge is managing stress.
And would you say, you know, you were saying that, you know, when the babies are teaching the parents how to be there for the baby, and, you know, with the overwhelm and stress that could happen, would you say, I mean, this is coming from a completely naive side of things, that if your baby is having sleeps during the day, that it would be a good idea for you to have sleeps at the same time?
Well, I think it's a great idea, but you know, I would know that for some women that would be a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
I mean, when you've got maternity leave, if you're if you're not working, but you're in that early stage of maternity leave, to have that, try and get into the rhythm a little bit, so that then that rhythm comes into the baby's nervous system, even if it's just for the time of maternity leave. If you're able to have maternity leave,
I think rest is very good for us, isn't it? We forget that we know in the world that we live in, we're so agitated and high powered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of mums are working within 6 weeks of having a baby,
and it must be hard for the mum to then go back into work. And I mean, it's just,
well, those 6 weeks are very precious, and any mums listening to this, there'll be lots of mums who have had to go back to work really quickly. And so what is it they have to do? Well, those 6 weeks are precious, and they have to feel that whoever is caring for their baby will have a system and a good rhythm and a stress-free environment. And there are many skilled childminders who will have that in place, which is probably enormously reassuring to parents that have to work.
Absolutely. In your book, you were talking about that there is no understanding direction, or be quiet, or things like this, that you can imagine a stressed out parent saying to their little child or baby, that they have no idea of that, of understanding that. So ways of that to show them, how would you show them to help them understand, and so would be through being calm yourself, and then the baby connects with that calmness, and then it starts to be
it's your system, it's your nervous system that will impact on the child's nervous system. And as Alan Shaw refers to it as that mind on mind, that the parental state will then create the environment that will calm the child.
Yes, I remember someone telling me that the English way of being with a baby, it's lots of stimulation and lots of, and look at this, and then they saw an Asian mum and her baby in Starbucks. And the baby was just in her little papoose and looking outwards, and the mum was having a coffee, and there was absolutely no, look at this, look at that, but both seemed very calm, both seemed very at ease and happy. And so it was just interesting, that it's okay to be in a very calm place, even in the middle of a Starbucks, just to be as much as you can without wanting much coming in, much stimulus.
So and you're referring to different cultures. Fundamentally, the cultural differences in raising children, but there's these core things remain the same. But I think in terms of overstimulation, you don't want to overstimulate a baby, but then there's a balance, because babies do need and love and will create that stimulation around them. They will indicate. And again, that's part of attunement, isn't it? That your baby needs stimulation for its brain to develop. And so some is great, but overdoing it is incredibly overwhelming. So there's lots in that. It's great if you can. It's about downtime, isn't it? I mean, so if you go across the developmental spectrum, one of the things I'm always helping parents with is downtime. Because we don't really, and I wouldn't dare, really refer that to different cultures, because I don't have enough knowledge of that. But we're not very good at that downtime, and I think we overwork ourselves, and we overwork stimulation of our children, and then we wonder why everybody's struggling with anxiety and depression. So we've got bits to look at there. But I'm all for mums having lovely quiet times if they can make that happen for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this, for the end of the sort of, birth to sort of infancy, sort of, 18 months, is there one little nugget of goal just to kind of wrap it up?
I would say try to be incredibly compassionate towards yourself and your job and your baby and the task of caring for your baby, and try to let others help you. And I would also say, and it's very cliche, but try to enjoy every minute, because it's such a precious time that doesn't come back, and it will be gone all too quickly. And try not to panic, and try to have lots of calm down time, and try to enjoy that baby. Just try to enjoy that baby, because it's the baby will be trying to enjoy you. We're primed to our sensory systems want to have positive experiences, positive noises, positive cuddles, positive smells, positive taste, all of these things. So just try to let those minutes happen. Try not to, it's hard, because it's a tough world, but I think that's what we're heading for. Don't be afraid to let yourself just enjoy that baby so much. They're so precious, such a precious thing.
Absolutely. And you're saying, you started by saying having a lot of self-compassion, and I think that's quite a hard thing for people to find, because we're in a society where we're doing a lot of sort of comparing and and judging, a lot of comparing and judging, and we see a lot of idealized versions of motherhood all the time. We see after a baby your body's fall into pieces, and we expect ourselves to be thin after having a baby. We expect ourselves to be full of life. We expect ourselves to look like some kind of supermodel, whatever. These are harsh expectations. They are going to they ruin everything. Try to feel the best you can be. But you're absolutely right. We live in this world of such high standards and expectations, and it's all a bit not like that. It's an added stress and strain that is really not needed, and finding a way for if you were a parent, to find a way of bringing that self-compassion and kindness and care to yourself. Meditation is a wonderful tool for that. Obviously I would say yoga, because I teach yoga. Nature, going for walks in nature. Yes, that's absolutely right. And none of those things cost money. Exactly. You don't need to be, I would say that a lot in the book, you don't need to be rich to be a great parent. Absolutely. You really don't. You can be an absolutely amazing parent. You can be you don't, it's quite nice if you've got plenty, but if you haven't, don't start making a big thing about that, because you don't have to be rich to be a great parent. I remember reading so she's a grandma now. She was brought up, I think, in the 50s, and her family didn't have much money, and they were surviving on potatoes. And she didn't have any idea that they weren't rich, or even they were barely surviving. And the mum used to come up with all these great ideas of making potatoes, and she made chips, and they put their table across the front door open onto the street, and she pretended to be the chippy, and the children would go around the front, and she'd wrap the chips up in paper, and they'd pretend to pay. and they thought it was the most incredibly brilliant, fun way of eating chips, and she not thinking at all that they were lacking in anything. So it's an interesting creative job almost to find ways of, I suppose it is a way of protecting children of the harshness of reality. You know, it's a creative job. How can you do that to protect the baby or the child's inner world? You know, not sort of laden it with the heaviness of what's reality.
Yeah, and you use the term inner world, and of course there's that inner development, as well as the incredible physical speed of physical development and brain development. The whole thing's happening there.
Yeah.
And then goes across that lifespan and doesn't stop, really.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you very, very much. And let's so this is part 1, and there will be a part 2 very shortly, and we will get on to that when we're ready.